So CAPS is this student counseling service, and all students, graduate, undergraduate, professional, part-time, doesn't matter what category. The students that sometimes fall in the cracks in the past have been postdocs. We will treat them at the same as well. Up until this year, however, now I think starting maybe here through last year, I'm not exactly sure, they fall in the EAP, so they can get services from that as well. But still, some of them find our way accidentally, so we're happy to engage them and guide them in the right way. We will do that also with just about anybody. Drexel students, alumni, doesn't matter. You walk in, we're going to at least talk to you and see what's going on and put you in the right place. So I put that in there first because although obviously we are the Penn Student Counseling Center, it's not necessarily a barrier. We have treated the UPS driver who happened to walk in, you name it, we're not going to turn you away. Obviously, we provide all the stereotypical services that you know quite well from the Students Counseling Center, and it may be helpful to just say the breadth of them. We are a rather large center, probably one of the largest in the country. We have a huge training component of postdocs, interns, both in psychiatry, psychology, social work. We have a full-time clinical staff of just around 30 people, and there's 5 or 6 prescribers, which would be psychiatrists and clinical nurse practitioners, as well as licensed psychologists, social workers. All the clinicians are licensed by the state of Pennsylvania, and all are guided by the laws of that license. And those laws supersede FERPA and HIPAA in our case. So a lot of people say, well, you're under HIPAA. Actually, the Counseling Center of Penn is not a HIPAA entity because we do not send bills, we do not transmit anything electronically, but we are guided by the laws of Pennsylvania, which actually are a little higher. So we treat everything on the continuum from normal, ordinary developmental things that college students bump into, and that's kind of why we really exist in the first place, to help students enhance and support their education and their academic experience. And probably 80 to 85% of the students that come to CAPS come for these ordinary reasons that you would expect in normal development, and they come for fewer than 5 or 7 times, and they kind of bounce around an idea, and they get what they need, and they go on their way, and that's a very healthy use of the center. There's another percentage, which is smaller, but like 15, it's a lot of students, who we treat for very serious mental illness. And we have the ability to do that. We can treat, and we do treat serious mood disorders, and anxiety disorders, and psychotic disorders, and we can treat them for long-term or short-term. But we can definitely engage them. We kind of view ourselves as not the treater of mental illness on campus, but rather a gateway for students into an incredibly large system of mental health services. Because let's not forget, on this campus there exists all of UPHS, the Department of Psychiatry, there's outpatient clinics, there's specialty clinics at Penn, and just about everything you can imagine. There's a huge array of services to help students with anything related to mental health. CAPS is perhaps the biggest one for the students, but is by far the only one. Nowhere near the only one. We are more generalists, so when we have specific problems in depression and anxiety, wherever, there are research clinics, there are specialty clinics that deal with this, and we try and guide students to them as best we can. I say this because the students are always dispelling this, and one of the ones that we hear is, well, I'm going to go to CAPS, you're just going to refer me out. And the truth is, sometimes we do. Because the care that we can recommend for you is better than you can get at CAPS. It can either be provided to you for a longer period of time, or for more acute service, or because you're going to get somebody with a higher degree of expertise than we are going to provide at our generalist degree. Having said that, though, we refer out about slightly under, around 20%. So 80% of the students, we just keep and treat them. Let me dispel another myth that I heard somebody ask this morning. There is no policy that limits the numbers of sessions we treat students. The majority of the students, probably because of the symptoms and the way they present, don't stick around very long, and we're happy because of that. Probably the best reason for getting into therapy is to get out of therapy. So that's good. However, we also have students who stay 2-3 semesters until they get somehow stable in their symptom presentation. Again, that's a myth of students because they think there is no caps, but it's just that if somebody asks, what's your average length of stay? It's probably somewhere around 7 or 8. I hate to say that in public to students because they take that as gospel. Oh, you 7 times. No, that's a statistical average. The range is probably like 140 to 2, you know, so let me see what else I can do. Although the clinical services, which is the program I'm describing, is the most visible, it's the one you see, it's the one you refer students to, it's not necessarily the fastest growing. Meeta Kumar, who you met earlier this morning, some of you, is the director of our allergy prevention program, and that is like the biggest growing. And it's a huge public health model where we're trying to reach the community, principally students, about just healthy living, wellness programs. The eye care program is the biggest one that we're training them, which is really gatekeeper training, but there's also tons of mindfulness programs and yoga programs, dog therapy programs, acupuncture, you name it. It's like a huge wellness program that kind of goes under the radar because the direct clinical services are the most visible and it's always the one in the newspaper. The other function that we serve, which is enormous, 1 minute left. Did you see this morning them hold the sides up in the back? You got 1 minute left. They're an amazing team. Is our consultation. I mean, the most important for faculty and staff and faculty is consultation. We do it all day long, nonstop. People are calling with simple questions, and they can be anonymous. I got a student in my class, they're kind of doing this, or they're saying this, or they're presenting this. Can you tell me? Can you give me some advice? All the way to, I have a dangerous student, can you come to my office and like talk to the student? And everything in between. I think we have gone to offices and got students out of people's departments. I think the most interesting one I ever had, on the other end, I had about 5 years ago, I had a faculty call me and say, I'm brand new, I just started lecturing, and I have to fail a student. I've never done that. Can you give me the words to say? I'll take this any day. So that's important to the consultation. I heard somebody ask this morning, can we just call up? Yes, you can. You just call up and you end up speaking with one of the triage clinicians. But I would say if you want to call, you should ask for Bill Alexander or Mickey Siraj or Meeta Kumar. Ask for one of the executive team because they can spend more time with you. You don't just want to triage clinician, they're on the phone making student calls and calling people back. You should ask for me or Mick or Meeta.
So we'll make sure that contact information gets to today. So next up is going to be Weingarten and MERS, and then we talked about 2 departments, so I might be giving you a little bit more time. 5 to 7 minutes.
The Weingarten Center is the home to 2 offices that work very closely to the academic lives of the students. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk to you. So I'm going to talk about them separately, but I think it's a shared goal of these offices is to help students feel comfortable with their academics, to feel like they're in control, to reduce academic stress, and to increase academic engagement and sort of the intellectual life of the student. We're located in Stouffer Commons, which is has a Spruce Street address, but is actually on Woodland Walk. We're on the 3rd level, which is actually the 2nd level. So once you get past that, once you find us, or the students find us, then the rest is actually really easy. When you come in our door, you'll notice that the pen decals, a little bit of trivia, is backwards. Our shield is backwards, and it was a mistake in the construction, but we like to say that when students come in, maybe something's not quite right, but when they leave, everything's in order. So that's kind of a metaphor for what we do. I wanted to spell myth. Bill used my term that I was going to use, of a learning center. Because I think that the idea of a learning center is a place where you send broken students and they get fixed and they get sent back to class or to TA and then they're whole again. And in a way, we do that. I don't want to say that we never do that, but it's more of a place where students who are bright and have incredible skills and ability are facing wonderful challenges and opportunity, and something's not coming together. And we see the job in the Office of Learning Resources as helping to get those students to put in those gaps, which may be because they came from an under-resourced school, maybe they came from an over-resourced school. It can be because they're taking what I'm calling an academic risk, and that's really positive, and they're doing something out of their comfort zone. Maybe they're a science major and they want always do creative writing, but they're finding that the way they studied for their science courses isn't quite the way we study for history. So we do what you would think of as in a learning center. We do work with academic reading and writing and studying and time management and exam preparation and classroom skills. But we don't do that as like autonomized skills. So all of those skills live, and you know this, I don't have to tell you this, that they live within courses and textbooks and the time of the students in their lives and their schedules. So we work in what we call an authentic model. We work with the students with their work. So it might look like something like this scenario. A student who says, I've been studying really, really hard for a biology exam. I've been studying harder than I've ever studied in my entire life. I'm teaching it to everyone else, and I'm getting this bad grade. Something's not going right. And we kind of take that apart. We say, what does it mean to study hard? And what does it mean to have a bad grade? And as you know, that bad grade could be an A-, and it could be something below the mean. And then we look at what they're doing, what the student's doing, and we see where the missing piece is. So it's not uncommon to have a student that's taking terrific notes and going to class, but going to class cold without prep, or never looking at the notes until the exam, the day before the exam. And I think by showing them actually some research, we try to approach them intellectually and say, this is how the learning curve works, the forgetting curve works. So if you've got all this great knowledge after class, but you're not doing it, and you're working on short-term memory, which was just terrific in high school, that doesn't work here. So I think, by approaching that, explaining that to students, they are actually really eager to figure out, okay, this is the way the learning style works, and my approach to learning. We're professional staff. We're not a peer-to-peer organization. We have a specialist in STEM, a specialist in working with students whose first language is not English, someone who works primarily and has a background in learning disabilities, and we're staffed with doctoral fellows from the School of Education who bring this incredible energy and understanding about learning, and so it's really a nice balance of the stability of a full-time staff and doctoral students who keep us on our toes and are always changing. We work primarily individually, one-on-one with students, and with walk-ins, but increasingly we're doing more and more workshops and doing them with faculty. Faculty who have said, there's this one assignment that if we can work together on that, or we've identified gateway classes where we can do some interventions with. So I'm really valuing the collaborations we have with faculty. Other ways we work are with at the very least, putting a syllabus statement about the Weingarten Center, about each of its 2 offices, and we have that on our website. Cut and paste, you can change it, because the syllabus is there for the student for 15 or 16 weeks of the semester. Consult, call us and say, I have a student, and this is what I'm seeing, what do you think? And collaborate with refer the students and collaborate, on some of the help for the students. I hope gives you a sense of what the Learning Center is, because sometimes it doesn't make sense to have a Learning Center at a place like Penn where everybody is really smart. But the truth is that students who are really smart sometimes never had to figure out how to study. Yes.
I know you work with undergraduates. You also work with graduate students.
Thank you. Yes, about 40% of our individual work is with graduate and professional students. We work across the graduate and the professional schools, the professional programs, and of course the undergraduate. And that's both offices. Thank you. So, a few words about student disability services. So, providing access and keeping a university that's non-discriminatory is a university responsibility by law and by university policy. But a lot of the responsibility resides with the student disability services. There was a thoughtful reason for putting the disability offices with the Learning Center about 15 years ago. And that was that we wanted to provide the accommodations that the students deserve by law, but we also want to encourage this population of students to become more independent. So we're trying very, very hard to do that. You may all have received a letter that says you have a student, these are the accommodations. What happens behind the scenes is that students provide documentation, it's carefully reviewed, and there's a thoughtful process for determining what those accommodations are. And a lot of them have to do with things that happen in the classroom. Extra time, computer use of a scribe, so that we rely on faculty to be our partners in making all those things happen. I mean, right today there's a department full of students who are studying and taking exams. We have an increasing population of students with disabilities. The largest population is learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder, though our largest growing group of students are psychological disabilities and chronic medical health. And the reason is that these students are getting better help in high school, and we're starting to see that. We're seeing more students with Asperger's, students on the spectrum. And in many ways, our students fall into a category of like twice exceptional. Exceptionally bright, they all come through we don't have a special program. They apply to Penn, they're accepted, it's a regular process. But they have some exceptional ways of learning. And not only are these deficits, but they're incredible skills, creativity, and ways of looking at the world. So that we're also hearing from places like Google and IBM and Goldman Sachs that are asking us to give information to these students because they are learning that these students are students that they call high potential, also have different ways of sometimes looking at the world. So again, the staff is a professional staff of people, individuals who have studied this, have experience, and then an incredible group of 2 who make all those accommodations happen. We do about 80% of the accommodated exams. Faculty do about 20. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. But if you have any questions, there's a lot to not do. Obviously not to provide accommodations without a letter from the office that can just lead into a sometimes legal problem. SDS is kind of like a lightning rod. Just send it to us and we'll take care of it. And whenever we can help, in like reformatting text for students who are visually impaired, arranging for the interpreters in the class, and for the most part, faculty have been like absolutely incredible whenever we've had to ask to make adjustments in their class to accommodate the student. Yes.
Roughly what fraction of students that come to Weingarten are students with disabilities?
So there are about, I would say, it's hard to put a percentage on it, but because we do the statistics separately, but there are over 1,100 students who have identified with a disability. About 800 of those students are actively involved each year. Of that group, I would say about 80% of that group works with both offices, but Learning Resources works with like about 45,000 students. So, What? 425,000. Not 45,000, please. No.
They've increased the population, you just don't know about it.
425. 4 high students a year, either in a group setting or individually. So it works well because sometimes students will come in for learning instruction and will know something is not right. Not all students are identified before they come to PED. Some of them have compensated in ways that are incredible. And then some the students with disabilities. And then we have students with temporary injuries that we also service. Broken hands that need technology, voice to text, or a scrub, or something like that.
I know this time of year it does seem like 45,000
If
students that we've
if
seen.
you
also.
go over there today,
Yeah.
if you walk over there today, it seems like 45,000.
So with that, we have student health services next.
I think John and I are going to tag team a little bit, so do you want to take this first slide? Okay. So we're tag teaming because we're similar to Weingarten, where Campus Health and Student Health Service are co-located. We work very, very closely with each other. We talk about student health and campus health being the C3s. So the first C being our clinical services. So what you normally think of as one-on-one patient medical care. Campus health being the second C, and we do all of the public health activities for the university students, and that really means that we're doing active disease surveillance. So at any given time, we can sort of tell you what disease and how much is on campus. We do most of the health education and health promotion on campus, and then we also do some health policy work. The final C is compliance, and that's because student health is charged with upholding the university's insurance and immunization requirements. So just focusing on campus health for a little bit, I think you have, hopefully you received a handout in your folder. We are sort of known as the bubble brand. So on one side are a bunch of big bubbles that show all of student health clinical services, and on the other side it reviews these, which is our campus health health education workshops that are available to students. We certainly spend a lot of time working with student groups and in college houses. Can you click the button for me? So all of those bubbles, imageries stand for things. So Be Well is our stress reduction. Bike Well, we do urban bike education, and we also do some bike policy work on campus. Breathe Well, Penn as of September is a tobacco-free campus, and so we've been working with HR very closely to coordinate resources, specifically tobacco cessation resources. What's next? Eat Well is our nutrition education. So John can talk a little bit about the nutrition services available at Student Health, but on the campus health side of things, we do a lot of general nutrition education, as well as some nutrition policy work with dining services here. Every October, we offer a massive flu vaccine clinic, and this is open to you all as well. It's open to students, faculty, and staff. That's another initiative where we partner closely with HR to make sure that what we're offering to students is also available to faculty and staff. Move Well is exercise and physical activity and fitness, where we can offer suggestions for dorm room exercises, and really just making sure that our students aren't just sitting and studying all the time, but are maybe finding active ways of learning, or at least trying to get outside every once in a while and smell the fresh air. Sexual health is always a big topic on college campuses, so we do a lot of sexual health education. Sleep Well is our newest program area, and one I think we'll continue to focus on, really trying to teach students the value of sleep and, where possible, increase the amount of sleep that they're getting. And then finally, the disease prevention on our website, if you click on that button, it takes you to sort of a list of diseases, and they're generally diseases that have been, communicable diseases that have been in the news for one reason or another, either because they've been on another college campus, or like Zika virus and Ebola and MERS-CoV, they're just international illnesses that are taking up a lot of the headlines. And so we want to make sure that our entire Penn community has access to resources and information about some of what's going on. So we certainly are out there, very similar to CAPS on the outreach and prevention side of things, trying to teach students good, healthy behaviors, but also to help keep them healthy and well and maybe out of student health. Next slide.
So, looking around the room, I think that many of you probably went to college around the time when I went to college, or near there, and you probably remember what student health was like at that time. When I went to student health when I was an undergraduate at Johns Hopkins, it was like one nurse in the back somewhere, and you swabbed your own throat to see if you had strep. No, this is true. It actually happened. So this is not what we have in student. The sort of the state of the art of student health these days, especially at a place like Penn, is very different. We have a lot more resources to support our students, because in the end, what we are trying to do is allow our students to have everything they need to be successful academically, which means that we support their health so that they can be as successful as they can in their academic pursuits here. And when we think about being wellness partners, and thank you for all being part of this, it's important to remember that wellness is not just the mental health, but it's a lot of things. It is the academic pursuits, it is the financial wellness, it is the physical wellness. It is a lot of other things that all contribute to the total wellness of a student here at Penn. So can you click one more? This is where we are. We are the entire first floor of this building. So we have a very large operation. We have about 20 clinicians, and that includes physicians, nurse practitioners. We have a lot of primary care physicians who are board certified. All of our physicians are board certified. So we have family physicians, internists. We have an infectious disease specialist. We have a gynecologist. And in addition to the physicians and nurse practitioners, we have a podiatrist who comes several times a week, as well as full-time nutritionists who are available to support our students. We have a clinical care manager who is actually a licensed clinical social worker, who is there to assist with mental health issues that might arise during the clinical encounter. So many times students will come in for a physical complaint, but it turns out that there's also something psychological going on as well. And so we have this resource on site so that students who are in a psychological crisis have the support that they need while they're here with us. And there have been times when our staff will then walk the student across the street to CAPS to get that additional care that they need once we've addressed their mental health needs, their physical health needs in our office. We also, when students come in, we do a screening for depression using the PHQ-2 and PHQ-9, which are validated instruments that can be used to identify depression. And so every student who comes in for a medical visit in our office fills this out when they check in. And if it comes back positive, we investigate further to identify whether or not this is a student who is in some type of psychological danger, mental health crisis at that time. And so that helps us to really be able to address that, even if their reason for coming in was just a cold or something along those lines. Let's actually go to the next slide. So these are the other bubbles from the clinical side, and you can see we have a lot of different opportunities for engagement with the students for care. I mentioned some of those already. We do a lot of sexual health screening, so students who are worried about sexually transmitted infections can certainly come in to be tested. And our staff are also trained to address issues surrounding sexual violence, and you'll hear more about that later, but many of them actually come to us first because they're worried about getting an STD or getting pregnant from that encounter, and then through that interaction we identify that they've been assaulted, and then we can connect them with some of those additional resources. We do a lot of travel health. Who's from Wharton here? A lot of travel health with the Wharton students, but really students from medicine and nursing also travel a lot too. So we do the pre-travel evaluations and counsel the students to make sure that they are protected when they go abroad. And we also offer the vaccination, so things that you don't usually think of your doctor having, such as Japanese encephalitis or typhoid or yellow fever vaccine. We do that on site. So that is a great resource that we can do without having additional copays for our students. Many of you who have traveled before know that going to a travel health visit can be very expensive because most insurance plans don't pay for it. So we offer those services in our office. We have smoking cessation visits that are available with a mindfulness approach, and those visits are available for free for any students who wish to quit smoking. We also offer transgender health. So if you have students who are struggling with their gender identity, or who are not struggling but just want to make sure that their transgender health needs are met, we do offer those services, including the prescription of hormone therapy and referral for surgical services as needed. And we've also done, through our work with Aetna Student Health, we've done a lot to advocate for coverage of a lot of these types of care for our students. We at Penn, those of you who may not know, Penn was one of the first schools in the country to cover transgender health services through the student health insurance. And so we're very proud of being involved in that, and we continue to partner with the LGBT Center and others to make sure that we are providing the care needed by our students. Oh yes, I forgot to mention sports medicine. We have certified sports medicine specialists in our office as well, and this is really important for our students, not only the athletes, but for our non-athletes. A lot of our students will have sports injuries or repetitive stress injuries and so on. So we provide great care there, and we have an athletic trainer on staff who helps to provide additional education to our students who are dealing with the sports medicine needs. And one of the things that we've dealt with a lot and have gained quite a bit of expertise in is concussion care. So we have many students who have had concussions, and for all of you, I think it's important to know that if a student has had a concussion, that they need to be on brain rest for at least a short period of time. And so we try to make sure that, at least for all the undergraduate schools, that there's some unified processes for addressing concussion care. So whenever a student comes into our office and we identify that they have a concussion, the student doesn't have to log into the computer and email all their professors, because that's using your brain. And so we communicate directly with the advising officers at the undergraduate schools to let them know that the student is not going to be in communication with you for 48 hours because they have a concussion. And that really helps to allow the student to recover as quickly as possible. And oh yeah, and we have acupuncture as well, and therapeutic massage. So those things are available for our students who need that help. So overall, I think that there's a wide range of resources for the students. We encourage all of the students to come in and see us, and especially people with chronic diseases. We hope that they can establish some relationship with us early on, so that if they ever get an exacerbation, that they're familiar with us and that we're familiar with them. We do a lot of behind-the-scenes work. We follow up on ER visits that our students make, and if ever a student is admitted to the hospital, our physicians are all credentialed to the University of Pennsylvania Health System. And so we actually go into the hospital and see the patients and make sure that they're getting the support that they need. Their primary health needs within the hospital are taken care of by the hospital team, but we provide additional support, provide additional clinical history as necessary, and also make sure that the students get the follow-up that they need when they're released from the hospital. Just another shout out about the flu vaccination clinics, that if you haven't participated, I highly encourage it in the fall. Students and faculty and staff can go in and out within 5 to 7 minutes and get their flu shots done. But what this process does for us is it allows our campus to be prepared for any type of public health emergency. And so if there's a need for everyone in the campus to get iodine pills or some type of medication because of a public health emergency that's happening in Philadelphia, we are actually part of a citywide process of dispensing all of this. And so the health department entrusts us with the process of making sure that everyone on campus is safe if an emergency happens.
I was thinking that if I tried to start off by dispelling myths about sexual violence, we'd probably be here a very long time. So I won't take that approach. I'm actually here representing a much larger team of folks all around campus who are responsible for responding to incidents of sexual violence, relationship violence, and stalking, and also preventing those issues. In your folders, hopefully you received the resource guide, which gives some more information about the related policies, all the different offices that are responsible for responding, what the reporting processes look like. You all probably also pretty recently got some more information about what your reporting obligations are. So that in itself, obviously, it could be a long conversation. But I'll talk a little bit about specifically what my office does, and you'll see a snapshot up here of my website, Penn Violence Prevention. So I myself am an office of 1, soon to be an office of 3, and I primarily oversee our efforts to educate students about these issues on campus, and really educate staff and faculty on how to support students impacted by these issues. This website is relatively new. We developed it within the past year as a way to create one place where students and staff and faculty could go to find all of the resources related to these issues. So what are the policies? Where can you go for what? How can you request a training or a workshop? So it's all housed here. So we've been trying to put this out there so people know if you have questions, the students have questions, this is the place to go. We're also constantly updating it and adding new information. There is a tab specifically for staff and faculty where there's some tips on what reporting obligations are and how to support students. Just recently we added that traveling abroad tab that you see up on the right, which is information specifically for students who are going abroad and who might be assaulted while they're abroad, or at least while they're off campus. So this is really sort of the housing of a lot of information. There's a number of materials that come out of my office that are designed to raise awareness around campus, including the resource guide. You've hopefully also seen some posters around campus probably that are designed to start to educate students about what it means to be an active bystander, how to respond if a peer discloses an incident of sexual violence to you, things like that. Go to the next slide. And this is just a snapshot of some of the ways that we engage the members of the Penn community. So if you look under student engagement, I included on the first tab, you'll see Thrive at Penn, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And one of the Thrive at Penn modules is focused specifically on sexual violence, relationship violence, and stalking. We just developed a version of that for our grad and professional students as well. So all students, before they even get to campus, will have already been introduced to these issues, to what our policies are and what our resources are on campus. Once they get, for our undergraduate freshmen, once they get to campus, we also have one of our mandatory programs is focused specifically on issues of sexual violence and consent. It's called Speak About It, and it's actually an outside group that we bring in that does an hour performance where there's a series of skits and narratives that's trying to take all of this information that they learned in Thrive at Penn and show how it might actually play out in their day-to-day lives on campus. And again, to give them an idea of how they can intervene and how they can sort of be part of the solution. When we really think about prevention of sexual violence, it's about looking at this as a cultural problem that goes beyond Penn. And so part of what we're trying to do is engage students in thinking about, okay, what can you do to be part of the solution and pushing back on those norms that allow sexual and relationship violence to happen. We also have a group called a training called the Student Anti-Violence Advocate Training, which is a longer training. It's about 6 hours that we offer for students who really want to be better informed about these issues. It's actually pretty similar to this program, right? It's students who want to be better informed about these issues so that they can support a friend or a peer if someone they know experiences interpersonal violence. We have a lot of students who also take it because they're interested in it for professional development. So we've had a lot of nursing students, GSE students, students who see that these are issues that might be relevant to them in their field, and so they go through this training, and it's something that we've built up over the past 6 years and has had a lot of success. We also, one of our newer initiatives is this group called the PAVE, the Penn Anti-Violence Educators, and that's our student peer education group. So we have a group of students that I recruit and train, and we actually pay them to facilitate workshops with other students around campus. And this was our inaugural year with PAVE, and it was something that we really had a lot of success with. We see that when talking about these issues, students are much more likely to be open and honest about them with their peers rather than sort of with the grown-ups. So we have built that program up, and it's going to be even larger next year. And we have some good partnerships in place with working specifically with our fraternities and sororities, working with athletics, hopefully working in our first-year college houses. As some examples of our staff and faculty engagement, I should say, we have an anti-violence advocate training, which is known as the AVA training, that I host every summer. This will be its 7th year, maybe? Wow, yeah. It's a 2.5-day training, which I know sounds like a long time. We sort of look at it as an on-campus professional development opportunity. It feels like a conference in a lot of ways. We do bring in outside speakers. But we spend the whole first day of the training talking about the issues, talking about sexual violence, relationship violence, stalking, talking about consent, really trying to get everybody in the same place of understanding how these issues impact students. The second day, we spend the whole day talking about policies and procedures and resources and the many ways that students interact with us when they experience these issues. And then the third day, which is a half day, we do all scenarios and role plays and sort of practice skills of responding. It happens every summer. We usually have a wait list, although I just was able to secure a larger space for the summer, so we do have some spots open. So if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to forward that information along. It's in June. We have been talking about perhaps doing a shorter one for faculty, maybe sometime during the academic year, so that might be something we can make happen next year. There's a Penn Violence Prevention Committee, which is made up of staff and faculty on campus who I bring together twice a year just to give a snapshot of here's everything that's happening on campus, here are the ways that we're responding. This year we spent those committee meetings talking a lot about the data that came out of the AAU survey. We've also had some working groups this past year looking at, with colleagues from across campus, looking at how these issues have impacted different communities on campus, including grad and professional students and the LGBT community. And then finally, I'll just say that out of my office, I'm always organizing and putting together customized trainings, workshops, consultation. I'm happy to go to staff meetings or to just answer questions about where you should refer students, what your responsibilities are, how you should respond. A lot of times I'll get calls from faculty who a student didn't come out and disclose an incident, but they said some things that were maybe troubling, or a student who's wrote something in a creative writing piece about an experience with domestic violence, and you're just trying to figure out, how do I respond to this? Who do I refer them to? What are my Title IX obligations? And so I'm happy to be a point person to just help navigate some of those difficult situations as they come up.
We potentially have one more speaker, but he's trying to manage 2 different meetings. So I want to open it up to some questions that you may have for any of the folks here.
Can I ask one question? So sometimes sexual violence is pursued on sexual harassment. So what are the outcomes for the students that are experiencing sexual harassment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we complicate it a little bit at Penn because we have a whole separate policy for sexual harassment, whereas these other 3 issues are under their own policy. But yes, students who experience sexual harassment can utilize all of the same resources for the most part. We often have students who are experiencing sexual harassment or some form of gender discrimination, often utilize the women's resources at the Women's Center as well, or myself. We're both considered confidential resources for students who just need some support and advocacy or want to figure out what their rights are. So yes, the only thing that's different really is the reporting process. The formal reporting process for issues of sexual harassment look different than sexual violence.
So maybe to follow up on that, so we were told this year that there are certain sexual harassment, if a student tells us about it, we must report it on,
right? Is that also true about, what is that true about sexual violence? What are our obligations to report?
Yeah, so any awareness of sexual violence, harassment, relationship violence, or stalking all fall under that umbrella. Where if you know of a student experiencing any of those, the expectation is that you will inform the Title IX coordinator and will make sure that they are being informed of their rights and the resources on campus.
I'm sorry, you refer to whom?
It needs to be, you need to inform our university Title IX coordinator.
Who's that?
The
Sam Starks.
Title IX coordinator. That happens for an undergraduate student?
Yes, so any,
For a graduate student?
yes.
For a postdoc?
Who's anything? I think it's
Faculty
everything.
member? In other words, I was at the presentation you gave to the trustees, and one of the jaw-dropping things was that the reporting lines for sexual violence were very different if the perpetrator was a student, or the perpetrator was an employee, or the perpetrator was a faculty member.
Yes.
And at that meeting, it came out that for a faculty member, there was no office, that it went to the department chair.
Right, so that's changed since
Right.
that meeting.
So what is the current policy on that?
So what you're bringing up are two separate things, right? So the first thing you're talking about is what are faculty's obligations if they are aware of an incident. So as faculty and staff, if you're not considered a confidential employee, your responsibility is to inform the Title IX coordinator. And that guidance that was recently released specifically for faculty spells out what that process is of informing the Title IX coordinator.
Of any incident toward anybody on campus, so postdoc or other faculty member as well?
Yes.
Okay.
The second question, which is about what the reporting process is, it has changed since that trustees meeting. So it used to be very dependent on who the perpetrator was, and that's it would, where you went to make a report would depend on who the accused perpetrator was. Now any cases, any complaints being made against students or faculty go to the Sexual Violence Investigative Officer's office.
And that's you?
No, that's not me. I do the prevention work. I don't do the Title IX response or the sexual violence. I don't do the investigative
And
work.
so who's the Title IX and who's the sexual violence officer?
So the Sexual Violence Investigative Officer right now is Deborah Harley, and she has a deputy. This information is also in the resource guide. And then the Title IX coordinator's name is Sam Starks, and he's in the Office of Affirmative Action and Equal Opportunity Programs. Yeah.
These are really good questions because I think even folks who do this on a more regular basis, it does get overwhelming, right? So I think just remembering also sometimes, although a student is going to be highly emotional, maybe impacted in different ways, the crisis is right there. If they're in your office, at least at that moment, they're safe, at least from what's going on. So then we can make sure you can get connected to someone that we can get to the next steps of guiding it. Because I think we always think that moment we've got that student, we've got to make sure we've got everything to that student. And usually sometimes we're able to follow up and make sure the student's got a lot of resources. But these are all good questions because we always feel that pressure of that student right there, like what are we appropriate right now? I'm trying to think of everything from A to Z may be overwhelming even for the student. So trying to break it down to the simple components is a thing. How am I doing on time, Rob? Am I good on time?
A couple more minutes for questions if you want.
So maybe could I ask a follow-up question then? So if a student comes to us in confidence and says, I want to talk to you, and then reports something about being sexually assaulted, should we tell him or her at that point, I have to report this? That we need to communicate that to the student at that point,
Yes.
regardless of
As
how
early in that conversation as possible, be clear with the student what your role is and what your level of confidentiality is. Obviously, we hope that you can do that in a way that's not going to sort of shut them down from disclosing or receiving resources. So it's a tricky balance, but yeah, we want to be as transparent as possible with students so that they know this is what my responsibility is. And they might then choose to not share as much information with you, which is they have a right to do, but hopefully you can still then connect them with a confidential resource. We do have multiple offices on campus.
So basically the segue is if the student asks you, I want to tell you something in confidence, then you have to add the caveat, this is in confidence except, right?
Yes.
Jessica, can you
Sure. So the SAVA training is the one that I was talking about. That's the 6-hour training. We've had it. Sometimes we have it all day on a Saturday. Sometimes we do it over 2 Fridays. It's been a collaboration between my office and the Penn Women's Center for a long time. It is really a completely, opt-in. Students choose to do it for a variety of reasons. We do advertise it to grad and professional students, and we have had a number of them do it, especially in the grad school of education over the years, nursing students. And it's a program that, as the resources in my office increase next year, we hope to be able to sort of do more often because we've had a lot of student interest in it, especially from grad and professional students. And they do sort of get a certificate and things like that, so it feels like a sort of a conference for them.
I know that at lunch Val said this is a to be continued, so this is a to be continued. And hopefully you've gotten some sense of just there are resources on campus that focus on particular issues, but they work closely together. None of these issues are in its own silo. If you have a student who has experienced a sexual assault, make sure they're connected to CAPS, make sure they're connected to student health services. They may impact their academics, so at that point, learner staff may be involved, not knowing the reasons why, but just making sure that the student has all these resources. So these folks work really well together, but we also try to make sure the student feels empowered through all this process. So thank you so much for listening to all this information, and I think we're going to segue to the next session. So thank you very much. Thank you to our panel.